Hi everybody, Cheryl and Lady coming to you from the Ladies Garden and Home, and today we're going to talk about next steps for our garden planning, which is setting our goals and coming up with the strategies to meet those goals. So I hope you join us. So yes, I still have some Christmas decorations up, although I put the tree away to make room for my seed starting, which we're going to start this weekend. So last week I put together a compilation video of 2023, giving a look back at the garden every month, and I think that that's an important part of the planning process for me, is to really kind of familiarize myself again with the year in the garden, and remembering what went well, what didn't go well, and just kind of to jog the memory before we put things down on paper and before we start our seeds. It's important to set your goals for 2024. So I've set mine, but of course setting the goals isn't going to do anything unless you actually try to figure out the strategy to accomplish those goals. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And the first thing I guess you need to think about when you're setting your goals is, why are you gardening? Is it because you want to grow a ton of food and offset your grocery bill? Or is it because you want to get healthier, you want to eat healthier, you want an activity that will get you outside and exercising? Those are all, those are good reasons to have a garden. Maybe it's something that you want to do with your family, or, with your partners, a couple. I think it's important to keep the why in the back of your head while you are putting together your goals. These are my top 10 goals for 2024, and I know that's a lot, and people say, oh, you should just have a couple of goals, blah, blah, blah. But I have 10 of them. It doesn't matter how many you have. You might have more, you might have less, but these are my 10. So I think my first goal is going to be to set right my failures. I had a couple of doozies last year. I had no onions from my onion harvest, and I probably started and planted maybe, 120 or so onions. That was a failure. My leeks also were a complete failure, and that's because I didn't know I had allium leaf miners in that bed. Anyway, I'm really going to try hard this year. I've never had a successful onion harvest. I'm really going to try hard to get that right. What I'm doing with the onions, the strategy behind that is, I'm going to start a number of different varieties, and I'm going to see what works best for me in my garden space. And of course, I'm going to hopefully keep up on if there's any kind of pest pressure in the beds that I'm going to be planting them out in. My eggplant last year was really pretty crappy. I don't know why, but they didn't do very well in the spot that I've had them in the last couple of years in a row. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to change where I've had them planted. I usually don't rotate my crops. I'm a big believer in amending the soil and keeping the soil healthy. I do think, though, that maybe the eggplants, for whatever reason, maybe other things have gotten in the way of the light there. I'm going to try them in a different spot this year. I'm going to try corn again. I'm going to try different varieties of corn as well. Last time I planted it, it grew, but my corn was so small, it was like, I didn't think it was worth the space. This year I'm going to try a couple of different varieties and see what works well for me, and hopefully get some more food off of that crop. That being said, after talking about all the different varieties of corn and onions I'm going to be trying this year, I'm also making a conscientious effort not to try so many different varieties of vegetables, but stick to the varieties of that vegetable that did well for me and that we liked and tasted good. For example, Last year I tried, I think it was 8 different types of peppers, which in my small garden is a lot. I know people who, I don't know them, but you know, there are some YouTubers that plant 100 different varieties of peppers. I don't have that kind of space, but I tried 8 different types. I think I'm going to give up on the big bell peppers, and I'm going to stick with the smaller peppers. There were a couple of them that I really, really liked. You know, I like my pepperoncinis. Shout out to Mancini, the first and the second. I really like the Hungarian yellow peppers. I'm not going to go into all the varieties now. There's time for that. But the whole point is that I know which ones I liked. I knew which ones produced a lot for me, and I'm going to stick with those. Same thing with the tomatoes. I'm going to give up on a couple of them and try to just, in those spaces, put more of my sauce tomatoes, because I don't think I planted enough of those last year. So last year and going into 2023, I had decided to try a whole bunch of different varieties and just a less amount of types of vegetables. And this year I'm narrowing down those vegetable varieties. That makes sense. Sorry, I keep kicking you. Didn't mean to. I'm going to skip some years of growing certain vegetables to make room for things like the corn. So last year I had a very nice yellow squash harvest. I still have like a freezer gallon full of sliced up yellow squash. I just don't eat that much. So instead, I'm going to dedicate that space to the corn, like I said. Get better at timing. I made strides last year with the timing of my seedlings and plantings. But then when the fall came around and the fall crops were ready and to get in the ground, I refused to give up the space with other things that I had planted there. And then what happened was I got them in too late. So I really didn't have any fall harvest of any of my fall crops. I'm overwintering them, so hopefully, you know, they'll come back in the spring, a nice early harvest of, you know, my broccolis and Brussels sprouts and that kind of thing. But they need more time in the ground in the fall. I need to expand the garden space. I want to expand the garden space. I could create new beds in grow bags. Just put more grow bags out. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to put more grow bags out. I'm not going to, you know, dedicate more of the lawn space. Lady needs her room to run around, even though she's an old lady and she doesn't run that much anymore. She still needs her space. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to put more grow bags out there so I can grow more stuff. So that would be the strategy. Here's a goal that I've been putting off for, as long as I've been gardening. I'm going to learn more about soil health. I'm not much of a scientist, I'll be honest. I do want to learn more about the right amendments for the right kinds of vegetables and find out if maybe the reason, say for example, the eggplant didn't do well is because it was deficient in some sort of something that they needed. So, and I'll take you along on this journey, I ordered a soil tester kit. Now I know you can send your soil away to the, what do they call it? Cooperative? No, I don't know what it's called. Anyway, it's like the state garden agricultural center. Anyway, but I'm not really looking for tremendously thorough. But what this will test is you've got one for pH, one for nitrogen, one for potash or potassium, and one for phosphorus. So we're going to test the soil and then I can figure out how to fertilize correctly. Oh, I got to eat the pantry. My goal is to eat the pantry. I have so much in my freezer right now that I literally have a bungee cord, 2 bungee cords, forming an X from the bottom to the top so that things don't fall out on us when we open up the freezer. So It was great that I stored as much as I did, but I got to eat the pantry more. Either that or I got to figure out other ways to preserve. I did ferment and pickle quite a bit, but not as much as I have in years past. I think maybe that's why the freezer. Maybe I will try water bath canning as opposed to pressure canning this year. But I'm not going to make that a goal because I'm not going to promise myself to do that. Then I have to stay organized. I was pretty organized last year. I was better than in years past. I took better notes, let's put it that way, which is helping me this year in my planning. So it's important to do that. It's important to know the timing. It's important to keep yourself on a schedule. Staying organized also means doing things like planning in advance so you're not ordering certain things at the last minute and paying extra shipping on it. So there's some cost savings involved in staying organized as well. So these last two are probably the most important to me, is to be nicer to myself in the garden. And last year, I committed to 1 hour a day in the garden, when weather permitted, and not much over that. First of all, it was so much more productive than I expected, because normally I would keep everything for the weekends and then spend, 8-10 hours out in the garden, exhausted, hot, miserable. And this 1 to 1.5 hours a day, I don't know, it kept me fresh, I guess. And also, it kept the garden looking much better than it has. I mean, when you commit yourself to an hour a day, when you're out there, you're doing something for that hour. You're not just looking around going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Oh boy, I have to do that. I have to do that. So I thought that was really good not to overdo it. And part of also being nicer to myself is I have to be much more careful about my back and my knees. I've had back problems for a while. I have arthritis. But recently, my knees have really been bad, really bad. Like, kneeling is a big problem, even with a lot of padding. So, I don't really know how much I can not get on my knees in the garden, but I'm going to have to do something about that because it's become a big problem. Word of advice for gardeners everywhere is if you spend a lot of time on your knees in the garden, eventually it'll probably catch up to you. So be gentle on your knees. Use padding. The back issue, I'm not bending as much since I got the green stalk and I have vegetables that I plant out on my decks, on my deck containers. I'm not bending over as much. So that's helped my back quite a bit. But there's still stuff you got to do. You got to lug, you got to pick things up. So I'm going to call on the help of my son a little bit more than I have. I oftentimes take too much pride in doing things myself and not wanting to bother him. Oh, I can do it myself. But I need to know my limitations too. My final goal is to find joy in the garden. And last year I set the goal that I would read and listen to music more, and I did. And I actually really got into Audible books because you can actually work and read at the same time. Love that. If you followed me, you know I brought in a little rose garden feature around the Mary statue, and I planted a ton of spring bulbs this past fall. I think those flowers there, and just bringing more color into the garden is going to bring me a lot of joy. I also think really sticking with the hour a day thing, if I can stick to the hour a day and then spend some time just kind of listening to music, listening to my audiobook, and not actually working, that would also bring me a lot of joy. we're moving farther into the planning and starting to implement the strategies, it's important to prepare. So this isn't a goal or anything. I'm just reminding you. It's important to get things ready. So if you need potting mix, if you need seeds, do an inventory of your seeds before you order, okay? Because you'll get duplicates. Trust me on this one. I know. You'll all of a sudden you'll do your inventory and you go, oh, I already have 4 packets of this one particular variety of broccoli. I don't need a 5th, okay? So do yourself a favor and do that, but prepare. Now this is if you're seed starting. If you're buying plant starts, you've got some time. You know, clean out your seed starting trays. Make sure that they're, you know, they've been cleaned with a little bit of bleach. And I'm talking about if you're in relatively my area and it's not like, for example, summer where you are right now, then this doesn't apply to you. It'll apply to you next winter. 2024 is going to be an exciting year, and we're off to a good start if we've set our goals and we've figured out strategies to implement those goals. And in the coming weeks, I'm going to have a couple of more videos specifically about planning your garden. I'm going to talk about where to plant, like how to lay out your plots. And we're also going to talk about timing and organization of that timing. I hope you subscribe, and I hope you like this video. If you did, please give it a like. And I hope you have a wonderful 2024 and enjoy your gardening journey this year. From the Ladies Garden & Home, bye! Say goodbye, lady.
Lady says goodbye.